I'm going to show you how to make royal icing to decorate your sugar cookies. This is a recipe I use for all of my vanilla sugar cookies and in my workshops and custom orders. And so what you're going to need is a bag, a kilogram bag of icing sugar. We're going to use the whole bag. We are going to need a pinch of salt. We are going to need 3/4 cup of water. You're going to need imitation vanilla extract that's clear. So Wilton makes a brand that literally has cookies on it and it says won't change your icing color. So the difference between this and typical vanilla extract is that it's clear in color, so it won't change the white shading of your icing. So if you're going to be using a lighter color or white itself, you want it to not look beige or off-white. So this is clear so that it doesn't change the tint of the color. The last thing is meringue powder. My preference is Wilton meringue powder, but certainly if you want to experiment with other types of meringue powder, you most certainly can. I don't typically use actual egg whites for my royal icing. It's just a personal preference. And I find this works really, really well. What the meringue powder does, or the egg whites do to icing, is allow it to get firm so that you can stack them or do layered decorations, which is really great when you're doing up treats to give away or to package up in a container over a week's time. So that's what I love about the royal icing getting really stiff and firm so that it's stackable. So I'm going to show you what to do. And the first few times that I did this, I had to follow the recipe quite strictly because every time it was doing something funny if I strayed. But once you get a hang of it, you're going to be familiar with what the consistency should look like in the mixer as you go along. And then you'll feel more comfortable. So I just dumped the entire bag of icing sugar into my stand-up mixer. And I'm going to add a pinch of salt. Your pinch might be bigger than mine. Just pinch a little salt into there. And then we're going to use 10 tablespoons of meringue powder. So just make sure that they're level. So level means kind of taking your finger across to make sure that all the excess meringue powder is not sitting on top of the tablespoon. So I'm going to put in 10 level tablespoons of meringue powder. Nine and 10. Okay. And so what I'm going to do now before I add the wet ingredients is I'm just going to cover this with a tea towel because all of the powder will release some dust into the air. So this just helps it from getting all over the place and less to wipe down. So I'm just going to put it on low just for 10-15 seconds just to incorporate all the dry ingredients together. So then I'm going to add 1 teaspoon of the vanilla extract, the clear vanilla extract, and then the 3/4 cup of water. And again, cover it up, and we're going to start it on low, and I'm going to leave it on low for about 30 seconds. And then I'm going to increase the timer, increase the speed for a few more minutes. And you just want to keep an eye on the time. You don't want to overmix your icing. When I first started with this, my biggest problem was that I was getting cracks in the icing and it just wasn't the right consistency when I tried to work with it to decorate after I had made the mix. And my issue ended up being that I was over mixing it too much. And then when I was adding color and trying to get it thinner for flooding or spooning it into piping bags, I was handling it too much, and so it was getting overmixed. So just watch your timing so that you're not overmixing. So while it incorporates, just leaving it on a low speed. And you'll hear it kind of grinding as everything gets incorporated. That's okay. And then that's where you're just going to want to tap the sides of the bowl so that any icing, sugar, or meringue powder that's stuck on the sides can tumble in. So I'm just going to turn that off and just show you kind of where we're at. Hopefully you can see that. So it's starting to look softer and incorporated. There is still some along the side. So what I like to do is just to take my spatula and just go around and knock any of the powdered dry ingredients into the mixture so that they're not there after we're done mixing. So I'm going to close this again. I'm not going to need the cover now because all of the dry ingredients is pretty much absorbed with the wet. So now I'm just going to turn this up to about medium speed for about 1.5 minutes, 2 minutes. And what's going to happen now is it's going to start to look kind of fluffy. It has, if you use like the cupcake mixes from the container, that sort of consistency, that's what it kind of looks like. Or some would say toothpaste consistency, the white toothpaste consistency. That's what it looks like right now as it's incorporating. And then while it's doing this, the 2-minute mixing, I like to take white icing color. Again, Wilton makes this one, and you can find it in a couple of stores quite easily. So this makes the icing color more vibrant white. So you might think, well, the icing is going to be white already, but you do notice a difference when you add a little bit of this to the icing. It almost looks like liquid paper on the icing, so there is a difference, and you'll notice it when you do it. But I just put a little bit of this in to make the color a little bit sharper. The other thing that this does is holds the color together a little bit more. So for example, if you're going to use a darker color, often those colors will need a little bit more gel to get to their dark red or dark black or dark brown. And what happens when you add so much gel is that it starts to bleed. And what that means is that the grease from the cookie kind of goes up into the icing, and all of the gels on top start to get a darker color, so it might look a little bit splotchy. So this kind of just helps keep the color in, and it gives it a really nice look so that you won't have those marks on your cookie. And then for the lighter colors, obviously, it just makes it look like a more vibrant white. So I'm just going to show you where we're at right now. So this is what's called a stiff peak. So when you take your paddle off, you should be able to see that the icing is going nowhere. So that means it's fully mixed. It's very marshmallowy kind of looking and fluffy, a little bit like shaving cream. I'm just trying to help you with some idea of what the consistency should look like. But it's definitely stiffer icing. So this is what you would use this would be similar to like frosting a cake. So when you go around a cake with say a buttercream icing, this is similar to that sort of consistency. And you would use this also if you were going to pipe lettering onto a cake or onto a cookie or a cupcake. So this is certainly not the consistency that we would use for flooding or for details on a cookie, but this would be used for piping and for finer details that we don't want to move. If we made a line, we want that line to stay that shape or that thickness. So this is the icing consistency right out of being made, the stiff consistency that we would use. Because there's meringue powder in here, it's going to dry rather quickly. It's going to get crusty, and we don't want it to do that. So my suggestion would be to transfer this immediately into an airtight container. So I put mine right away into a container, and then I just take out what I need into a bowl and start mixing it with the colors and getting it to the right consistencies that I need. And then I would transfer those into either piping bottles or tipless bags. What I love about the tipless bags is that you don't have to deal with couplers or anything fancy to get these to stay together. So you're just going to put this over a cup, fill it with the color you want, and then cut the end of it to the thickness that you need depending on the detail of your icing. And then you can store the icing in the fridge for up to 2 weeks. And then when you're done with it, then you can just get rid of this and not worry about the bottles getting dyed certain colors if you're using darker colors. And the cleanup is a little bit easier. So these tipless bags are great. I tend to use a lot of bottles just because I do make so much icing in different colors that I'll use for different orders that I'm doing. And so it stores really nicely in the fridge, and sometimes the color separates a little bit. And so then I can just go and mix it up the next time that I need to use it to decorate. So I love both. Both are pretty easy to use. And I've linked on my page, on my Facebook page, where you can find these resources in Canada quite easily if you're going to invest in some of these products to do your cookie decorating. So I'm going to post another video about consistency and coloring the icing, but this is how you make the basic stiff white icing. And if you have any questions, just let me know.